Hey guys, probably gonna be a lot of background noise tonight, even though I'm sitting in this quiet looking place in back of our little apartment in Marrakech. We're staying at a resort and a lot of stuff is going on at it. It's a Saturday night. It's a lot of fun. It's in the middle of the desert. It's been up to 100, almost to 110. I think yesterday or the day before. Got up to like maybe 107. Very, very hot, but hey, I'm not here to talk to you about Marrakech. I'm not here to talk to you about the desert. I'm doing a blog about all that stuff, so hopefully you'll read that if you're interested in our travels. Tonight I want to tell you a story from my days at the IRS, and I want to preface it by saying that every once in a while I name somebody in a story and I don't really know their name. One example is in a few weeks, I think, I'm scheduled to tell you a story about my first night as a cop on the streets in South Philadelphia on Point Breeze Avenue. And I talk about a guy named Crazy Freddy. Well, there was a crazy guy, and he had a name, but I don't remember his name. I remember the story. I remember everything that happened like it was yesterday. But I just don't remember if his name was really Crazy Freddy. Tonight I'm going to tell you a story about a family, and for another reason I'm going to make up a name for them. And it's because if you owe the IRS money, IRS officers and agents and any employee working at the IRS is forbidden to disclose that information to the public. So these people owe taxes, but I can't tell you their real name, and that's a damn shame. And the reason it's a damn shame is because their name's pretty funny in and of itself. So I'm gonna have to give them a different name. The name I'm gonna give them is the Beaver family. But that was not their name. It'll be a funny story when I talk about the Beaver family, but it's an even funnier story when I talk to people who were there, who witnessed this, who I don't have a problem with disclosing the name to. I can't put this out on YouTube and say, oh, the such and such family owed taxes. Now, these people, that the family owned a business. I believe it was an aluminum siding business or something like that. And whenever you have employees, you're supposed to withhold federal income taxes and unemployment taxes from their paychecks, and you hold that in trust, and then you pay it into the government. Well, what happens a lot of times is people start to fall behind, and they say that they withheld taxes, and they withhold it based on what, their employees say should be taken out of their paycheck. So somebody might say, I'm married and I have 4 children. They fill out this form called a W-4, and then the company withholds the appropriate amount of tax so that that person can pay their taxes at the end of the tax year. But sometimes the company just can't make the payments and they fall behind. And they wind up owing what's called the trust fund recovery penalty. it's 100% of the tax that they withheld and didn't pay in. It used to be called the 100% penalty. Now, there were 2 brothers, a sister, and the father. And the father, Mr. Beaver, he was the head honcho. He came to the United States, and wherever he was from, beaver didn't mean an animal. Maybe he was from a French-speaking country, and it was beaver. And so when he got to the United States, everybody laughed at, like, hey, your name's Beaver. You like, and showed him, it's a picture. So these people all, had an accent. They didn't grow up speaking English. They found out about this. And remember, the name's not really Beaver. It's funnier than if you come to the United States and somebody says, yeah, your name's Beaver. You're a beaver. So we did the trust fund recovery against the father and the 2 sons, but we didn't do it against the daughter. Now, I went out and made a field visit to the Beaver family, and it was pretty interesting. You would write in your case history. I made a field visit, and the 21 Beaver Lane, and there was nobody home, but it said Beaver on the mailbox, and I knocked on the neighbor's door, and they said, yeah, the Beaver family lives there. Well, at this location, there was no number, and I never knocked on the neighbor's door because they had a beaver mailbox. They had a beaver windsock. They had beaver lawn ornaments and a beaver flag. So I just wrote that down in my history. I made a field visit. It's obvious, even though there's no number on the mailbox, that Mr. Beaver lives here. Now, Mr. Beaver never called me back. I left a note for him, please call me back. I went to the sons' homes and left messages for them, and they never called me back. So the sister, it turns out, lived in a house that her father owned, and she didn't pay any rent, but she lived there with a disabled child. The problem is, the 2 brothers and the father owned homes, and we couldn't seize those homes to pay off the trust fund penalty because it was their private residence, and that was against the law. The only remedy we had, and we tried everything, we tried taking their bank accounts, taking any accounts receivable from the business, all that kind of stuff, and it just didn't work. They wouldn't respond to me or anything. And I went to see the daughter, and the child was there in a wheelchair, and I couldn't disclose to her exactly what was going on, but she kind of knew, and I said, look, this is really bad. Nobody in your family is contacting me, and our next step is to take your home because your father owns it. And that is something we don't want to do. We don't want to put you and your child out on the street. But your family is making it so that's the only thing that we can do. And she said, look, I'll have my brother call you. I think the father had problems with the English language, but I really needed to talk to at least one of them and get the ball started. So I said, well, I don't want to just have him call me. I want him to come to my office. So I wrote out a summons, and I wrote on it, April 1st, whatever year it was, 1993 maybe. 10 o'clock a.m., collection office, Trenton. And I gave it to her. And I said, this is a summons for your brother to appear and give testimony to me on his ability to pay this tax. And she said, I promise Mr. Clark that my brother will be there. Now, I didn't think about the fact that I scheduled a guy named Mr. Beaver to come to my office on April Fool's Day. But I did. And sometimes when you do something like this, you wind up playing an April Fool's joke on yourself. So I went back to the office, and everybody knew that I had the Beaver case. They knew that, they owed a ton of money. I think it was hundreds of thousands of dollars, and nothing was happening. And they did have assets, and so you start to try to move against those assets, and you talk about these things at work. What's working, what's not working. So everybody knew I had a taxpayer named Beaver, and I summoned that person to appear before me on April 1st in my office on, I think it was 44 South Clinton Avenue in Trenton, New Jersey. April 1st came, 10 o'clock in the morning came. No Mr. Beaver. So I went maybe to the bathroom, and I came back. Back then, there were no cell phones, early 90s. There were just starting to be answering machines. But what happened in most office situations is you had a phone that would ring. Anybody in the office could pick up that phone and answer it. And they would write down on this little pad that said, while you were away, such and such called, and this is what they wanted to talk about. And came back from the bathroom. On my desk was a piece of paper that said, while you were away, Mr. Beaver called to talk about your summons. And I thought, son of a bitch. This guy didn't show up, and now he wants to call me after I came in here today and waited for him to talk about this? Because this summons is enforceable by the court. We could go to the Department of Justice and have them go to the court and try to force this person to appear before us. And so I picked up the phone and I called the number. Now, I didn't realize, I heard them say the word popcorn, but the number that I called was the Popcorn Zoo in Trenton, New Jersey. And I heard popcorn and I thought, well, I don't know what this guy's doing now. He hasn't talked to me. Maybe he works at some company called Popcorn. So I said, hello, my name's Frank Clark. I'm with the Internal Revenue Service. I'm returning Mr. Beaver's call. And the lady said, sir, somebody's playing a joke on you. And I said, no, they're not. Mr. Beaver called me, and I need to talk to him. Please stop playing games. I know it's April Fool's Day, but Mr. Beaver was summoned to appear before me, and I want to talk to him now. And if you don't put him on the phone, bad things are going to happen. And she said, sir, somebody is playing a joke on you. And I said, no, they're not. They are not playing a joke on me. This is really serious. And Mr. Beaver's going to be in big trouble. He's going to be hauled before the court. And just then I saw a finger come across, and I just realized while telling this story that you won't understand what this finger was doing. And it hung up the phone. The phone used to be like this thing that was attached to a base, and then you would go and hang it up. And you could hang it up with a finger. You could go, and it was Kurt Gruninger, my coworker. And he hung up the phone, and he said to me, "April Fool's, Frank." So you would think that at this point in time, that I would say, "Oh, you really got me." I was so livid that Mr. Beaver had not returned my call that I said, "Kurt, this is not an April Fool's joke." I had Mr. Beaver, and he went, "Frank, just calm down." And I looked around, and the entire office was standing there. And as I looked at them, they just all burst out into hysterical laughing, crying almost, at the April Fool's joke that I played on myself. Now, I'll tell you a story like this, and I want you to remember in your life, you're not always going to be the hero of every story. Sometimes you will be, and sometimes you won't be. But tell your story, even when you look silly, because it shows that you're human, like that you're like everybody else. Peace out, guys.